Okay.
Be it enacted by the Congress here assembled that Section 1. Tech companies with global annual gross revenues equal to or greater than $100 million must pay 1% tax on the portion of those revenues derived from digital advertising services in the state of California to subsidize local news companies. A nonpartisan commission shall be established by the governor to distribute funds on the basis of editorial headcount and ensure that small publishers, including those covering rural areas and communities of color, get their fair share. B, in order to qualify for funds, local news companies must remove paywalls that block access to local news essential to public interest such as crime reports, severe weather incidents, natural disasters, elections, and health advisories. Section 2. A technology company, or tech company, is a company that focuses primarily on the manufacturing, support, research, and development of technology-intensive products and services. That's a typo. Local newsrooms are publishers that serve regional and local communities. Section 3. California State Franchise Tax Board shall oversee the implementation of this legislation. This legislation shall take effect on January 1st, 2025. All laws in conflict with this legislation are hereby declared null and void.
Thank you, Senator Burnson. Are there any motions on the floor? We're going to motion to open Congress.
Second.
That requires all in favor? Aye. This
All
chamber.
opposed? Okay. Good.
Do we have any speakers that would like to give an authorship speech? Do we have any speakers that would like to give a sponsorship, affirmative speech?
Okay. Hello, good afternoon. I would say like senators or representatives. I'm Senator Zhang, spelled Zhang, and I'll be speaking on the affirmation of this bill. Sure, converting to an economy where the possibility of getting your wallet stolen or your cash pickpocketed. I'm on the wrong one. Wait. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Senators, did you know that in the last 15 years, over a staggering quarter of local newspapers in the U.S. have shuttered their doors, leaving millions of Americans without access to vital news and information? Local journalism is the very foundation of the democracy our country was founded upon, the very cornerstone of American civic life. We cannot simply let these local news industries be under siege any longer. We must pass this bill. Foremost, local journalism has faced an unprecedented number of economic challenges in the past decade or so. This is greatly due to the decline in the use of traditional local news methods, such as print advertisements, like your local newspaper, as well as digital platforms gradually becoming the dominant news provider. In fact, revenue from local newspapers fell from $49 billion in 2006 to only $11 billion in 2022, meaning sales have declined over 70% over the past 2 decades. In other words, local news industries are at risk of being completely overrun with digital platforms, being forced to reduce staff, cut costs, and even shut down entire operations. This legislation provides opportunities to rejuvenate this industry and give local news organizations a more level playing field in this new society. Secondly, local news serves as a fundamental basis of democracy, as it holds public officials accountable and informs millions of citizens about local issues. A study conducted by University of Illinois found that counties with newspaper closures had a 1.9 decrease in voter turnout. With these closures, more communities have grown more distrust of their local governments, even suspecting corruption within them. This reveals just how crucial local news availability is for civic engagement, or in other words, the very quality of life in a community. Lastly, local news plays a vital role in a population's well-being. Studies from the University of Notre Dame have shown that local news coverages have actually led to increased crime rates This may seem absurd initially, but it makes sense. Less local news comes with lower quality surveillance over a community and therefore higher rates of crime. And with digital-based news becoming more prevalent year after year, the potential consequences for crime rates are only becoming increasingly devastating. By subsidizing California's local news industry, we are taking the first major step in restoring this crucial role local news plays in public safety, political engagement, and the very concepts of democracy our nation is built upon. Affirm this bill.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech. At 2 minutes and 49 seconds. Speakers, questioners, please rise. That goes to Senator Burnson, unopposed.
Senator Zhang, how do you respond to criticism of local news such as the Americans just don't want to buy local news anymore? Maybe that's the reason why the profits have fallen so increasingly.
Well, given the importance of local news, this bill clearly provides a solution to that. By providing funding for these local news, maybe we can reduce the paywalls and reduce the paying options that this requires.
The chair will absorb the rest of the time. Are there any other questioners? It's open to all of you as well.
How much does the plan cost?
The plan, I believe, is taxing 1% from yearly, was it? From annually, yeah, of tech companies over like $1 billion, so 100 million. I wouldn't say too much of a tax though.
We're allowed back and forth in questioning.
I forgot about that. You want to ask
Well,
about
the chair will absorb the rest of the time. Another 30-second questioning period goes to Senator Burnson.
Senator Zhang, with skyrocketing prices for living in California, why is it better to fund local news with our valuable tax dollars than to spend money from such a large amount of tax on building infrastructure or education?
Well, as I've already stated in my speech, local news isn't just purely for entertainment or breaking news. It's really for the well-being of the community and
The questioning period has elapsed. Would you like to continue this?
If nobody else wants to talk, sure.
Starting.
As I said, local news can really be beneficial in a way that other news can, and I think we need to prioritize that. As I've stated in my speech, it helps communities' well-being as well as their crime rates, as well as their political standpoint. So I feel like local news, despite it being one of the more costly things, it can be really beneficial. That's really bad.
The chair will absorb the rest of the time. The speaker may be seated. Seeing as we've just completed an affirmative speech, will any negative negation speakers rise? Senator Burnson.
Hello, I'm Senator Burnson, and I was speaking on the negation of this bill. I'm gonna write my name. It's not what they do. I will begin when the PO is ready. My fellow lawmakers, this proposed tax on tech companies' digital advertising revenues places an additional burden on a sector of the economy that already contributes quite significantly to tax revenues for California. Tech companies play a vital role in driving innovation, economic growth, and job creation, and imposing further taxes could discourage them from investing in critical research, development, and expansion within California. Targeting tech companies for specific taxation sets a concerning precedent, which may deter investment and entrepreneurship in the technology sector. Establishment of a nonpartisan commission tasked with distributing funds to local news companies raises questions about transparency and accountability. Without well-defined guidelines and oversight mechanisms, there's a risk that funds may be allocated unevenly, favoring certain publishers over others, and potentially leading to corruption. The requirement for local news companies to remove paywalls also raises concerns about editorial independence and freedom of the press, which could put nonpartisanship in journalism, something already on the rise on both sides of the political spectrum, in jeopardy. The Franchise Tax Board operates under the authority of an appointee who may be from a different sector, despite not directly appointed of the government. My bad, guys. Further complicates the issue of impartiality and raises concerns about the potential conflicts of interest. The proposed tax on tech companies' digital advertising revenues also raises the issue of double taxation. Digital advertising revenues are already subject to corporate income taxes, and imposing an additional tax on these revenues will place a disproportionate financial burden on tech companies. This could also disincentivize investment in advertising, potentially impacting the broader advertising industry. The tax will also have unintended consequences on consumers. If tech companies pass the cost of the tax on to advertisers, it could result in higher prices for critical goods and services to the consumer. Consumers may also pay more for essential or desired products and services, placing additional financial strains on households already burdened by the high cost of living in California, which has risen by 38% above the national average and to over $100,000 per year in many urban cities. Additionally, imposing a tax on digital advertising revenues will motivate companies to seek ways to minimize tax liability, such as relocating their operations to other states. This is shown by companies such as Tesla, moving away during 2020-2021 for the pandemic. This usually leads to job losses and reduced tax revenue for California, undermining the benefits of this proposed tax. The state government must thoroughly assess the potential for tax avoidance and long-term repercussions before implementing such a tax, or it might just not work. And thus I urge you, senators, to negate this legislation and prevent the massive failure this legislation will most assuredly lead to.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 3 minutes and 10 seconds. Questioners, please rise. That goes to Senator Zhang, unopposed.
Senator, you mentioned that big tech companies have already received many massive taxes in the past, and adding this additional tax would really harm them. But given that how slight it is, would you really say that this would prevent their expansion and investment ideas?
I mean, working at these large scales of companies, like over $100 million, 1% is actually quite a lot. Like 1% of 100 million is 1 million. 1 million is so much.
The questioning period has elapsed. Would you like to continue?
Do I have to, if I'm asking a different question?
You can continue your line of questioning.
You also mentioned that this tax would prevent innovation, but if it's applying only to these big companies, won't it really just allow for, or not really change the innovation environment? I don't know where that's from.
Well, many of the companies that are actually doing the innovation are larger companies that are awarded contracts, such as like Pfizer or BioNTech. And this additional tax will cause them to either go somewhere else, or which would lead to us not getting the innovations as quickly, or
the questioning period has elapsed. Senator Zhang, would you like to continue this? Are there any other questioners? The chair will absorb the rest of the time. The speaker may be seated. Are there any motions on the floor?
motion to proceed to the next.
That requires a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We will now move to a vote on whether or not we pass this resolution. Those wishing to affirm this resolution, please rise.
Yeah, how do we know they're gonna use the money right?
Those wishing to negate this resolution, please rise. So guys, that is a 0-2 vote. This resolution does not pass. The House may begin its recess.